earlier this week, there was a shooting that occurred in Houston, Texas, and you may be aware of it. In a moment, we'll show a video of the surveillance video. But essentially, there was a group of people eating in a restaurant, a small restaurant, convenience store type, and a person walks in waving a gun, demanding money and property from people in that establishment. They, in fear, give over their money and their property to this guy who has a gun. And at a certain point, one of the patrons has a gun of their own. They pull the gun out and they shoot the robber. Now let's take a look at the video real quick of what happens, and then we'll talk about it afterwards and how this can affect you. Okay, so to be clear, what we have here, and I'm not a lawyer, and I did 2 decades of law enforcement in Florida, so it's a little different than Texas, but let's look at what we have in the immediate instance. We have a robbery that's occurring. Somebody, by force or by fear, is taking the property of another using what appears to be a deadly weapon, a firearm. Someone else who's a victim and in fear for himself and others, presumably, takes out his gun and shoots the robber in the back. Now, this is the first thing that was brought up in the media. One of the first things that I saw was he shot him in the back. And when I do my classes, one of the things that we talk about is shooting someone in the back. And I'll always ask the class, how many of you believe that sometimes it's okay to shoot someone in the back? Raise your hands. And I get very few hands that go up. And I ask again, how many of you think that it is never okay to shoot someone in the back? And a lot more hands go up. And so what I do in that class, in that setting, is I usually have the class set up so there's people on either side and there's an aisle in the middle. And I'll pick someone who said that it is never okay to shoot someone in the back. And I explain to them, if you have a gun, let's say we're in a restaurant, you have a gun. I want you to yell bang whenever you would shoot me. And then I compliment them on something they're wearing. And then I turn my back to them and I talk to the people in the other half of the room. And I start complimenting them. Hey, that's a nice hat. Hey, give me your wallet. Bang, bang, bang. And I will start to yell bang that I'm shooting people there. And at some point, usually after about 5 or 6 people I've killed, the person will yell out bang. And then I'll turn to them and say, you shot me in the back. Why did you do that? And they said, well, because you were killing people. And I said, exactly. So now let me ask again, how many of you believe that sometimes it is okay to shoot someone in the back? Now almost every hand goes up. Because the reality is, sometimes it's okay to shoot someone in the back. If someone is actively killing someone else or other people, and you're only shot, if you decide to, you're under no obligation to do so. But if you decide to, you do not need to wait until they turn and start shooting at you. For the preservation of life, sometimes you can. But here's the catch. You have to prove, in almost any jurisdiction, why what you did was reasonable. And in that situation, you can say, well, it was reasonable because if I didn't act, then this crime would commit. And I had no other opportunity. He was not facing it at this point. So you have to be able to say why what you did was reasonable. And more importantly, that's going to be the job of your attorney. You really shouldn't be talking about your motivations, your fear, anything like that without an attorney present. Because there will be an investigation. And I'm jumping ahead, but let's talk about the situation in Houston. Because that was one of the first things that was brought up, was that he was shot in the back. And one of the next things that was brought up was that it was worded, he continued to fire 9 times, even after the suspect fell to the ground. Well, what does that mean? What does that mean that the suspect fell to the ground? Did the suspect fall to the ground but still have access to the gun? Was he still trying to point that gun? Because if you've just shot someone and they're going to shoot at you, then you may want to continue firing. So it's kind of an empty statement to say that after he was on the ground, people who are on the ground can be just as deadly as someone who's standing in front of you. So to continue that threat and to continue your course to stop the threat is important. It doesn't matter if he was already on the ground. What I would like to hear is, if this was the case one way or the other, is if he continued to shoot after the person had completely stopped any motion. If he walked up 5 seconds later and started shooting the dead body, that would come into effect. But we have no clear evidence right now that that's what occurred. One of the other things that the media has now focused on is that after the fact, it turns out that the dead guy had a plastic gun. It was a BB gun or an airsoft gun. But you know what? They're bringing that up again to discredit the Good Samaritan. At that moment, clearly people believe that that gun was real. How do we know? Because they were giving up their money. They were giving up their valuables. They believed that this individual who was committing a robbery was armed with a firearm. Now, if later on we find out that that firearm was ineffective or fake or a toy, does not matter. The belief at that moment is what we need to go off of. What did people believe at that moment? And clearly, they believed that their lives were in danger and that this was a robbery. So these are statements from the media that are designed to paint public opinion against the Good Samaritan who stopped everything. Now, in this situation, it probably doesn't look great that after he shoots the suspect, he then goes and takes all the money and valuables from him and redistributes it back to the victims. I'm not saying he did anything wrong. It doesn't look great when the media is going to paint this picture, and then he fled the scene. Now, some people look at that and go, well, why, if you've done nothing wrong, why would you leave? Well, here's what I would say to that. How do you know that the person who is robbing this place didn't have an accomplice who, once he realizes what's going on, isn't going to come in and try to finish the job? So I may leave also. And it seems like the man left, and I don't know the timeline, I'm not going to guess, but he reemerged a few days later with an attorney, and he went to the police department to give his statement to cooperate. And that's really how things should happen. Have your attorney, talk with your attorney, understand what's going on. Because also, remember, another reason not to give a statement immediately after something happened is we know from studies that your memory of a critical incident is better after 3 sleep cycles than it is immediately after, because you had tunnel vision and you were looking at life like this, and your brain remembers everything in the center of this tunnel. But as you sleep, you start to remember more and more of what happened. So he got that proper rest. He spoke to his attorney, and he went and gave his side of what happened. So so one of the things that I find important and that I offer in all my classes is, how do you find an attorney if you've been involved in a situation like this? Well, I can tell you this. If you've been involved in a situation like this, it's kind of too late to try to find an attorney now. You need an attorney and a plan ahead of time. And that's why I've partnered with Right to Bear Legal Defense. At Right to Bear, we serve our members around the clock, providing attorneys for any civil or criminal action from a self-defense claim, in addition to numerous other benefits. With Right to Bear Legal Defense, I have a phone number that I can call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and speak to an attorney if I've ever been involved in a self-defense situation with a firearm or any other weapon. I pay $125 a year for that privilege, and that's far cheaper than an attorney is going to cost. Look at this situation. This gentleman in Houston, he has gone out, hired an attorney. He's given his statement to the police. The police, in consultation with the district attorney's office, have sent their information in, and the district attorney, even though it looks pretty clear cut to me, the district attorney has said that they're going to convene a grand jury and have the grand jury investigate this. Now, how much is that going to cost in attorney's fees? This is a grand jury, it could be a several month process. This could be life changing for you. And that's why I encourage you to have Right to Bear. There are some others out there, but I find that Right to Bear offers the most comprehensive coverage for the most affordable price. Like I said, $125 a year. With that, I'm going to get the attorney for criminal and civil, because this guy could be sued now. And if you're involved in a situation, you could be sued. So criminally and civilly, I'm going to have psychological support. I can go speak to a therapist and they're going to pay for it. If my gun is taken during the investigation, which I can assure you it has been or will be, they're going to offer me a replacement gun, because that gun probably is never coming back. They're going to, with Right to Bear, I would get a replacement gun. Also, if I do need, especially at this early stage of going to the grand jury, if I need an expert witness to testify on certain things that occurred, that will be available to me. And I've put a link in the description below. I am an affiliate with Right to Bear, so I do get compensated. I'll be upfront with that. But if you look at all of my videos, I do not try to sell anything that I do not believe in 100%. Right to Bear is a fantastic company, and they're going to be there for you if you're ever involved. And again, I can't stress this enough. It's whether you use a gun or any other weapon. So as long as it's in self-defense, you're going to have an attorney for any criminal or civil action. And that's powerful. For $125 a year, you can't beat that. I can't think of any attorney that would take this case in Houston for, you have a dead suspect, there's video, all this. I can't think that they're doing this for anything less than a $50,000 retainer. And then if it goes above that, then they'll bill him for the rest. So it can be very expensive, and you get competent attorneys for $125. And I can pick my own attorney if I want. Right to Bear will just vet them to make sure that they're a quality attorney for self-defense. I hope you've enjoyed this video breakdown of the shooting in Houston. If you have, please consider subscribing to the page, like the video, and also, again, I cannot stress enough the importance of having a good quality attorney if you're ever in a situation where you've used force, whether with a firearm or with your hands and feet.
If you like my dad, like and subscribe.